In the 8th century BC, the kingdom of Judah stands on the brink of war. A powerful coalition known as the Syro-Ephraimite Alliance, comprising the forces of Syria and Israel, led by kings Rezin and Pekah, has mobilized against King Ahaz. Their ultimate goal is to breach the borders, invade Judah, and completely overthrow the established Davidic line of kings. King Ahaz faces a force that wildly outmatches his own. The ancient text describes his heart and the hearts of his people shaking as the trees of the wood are shaken by the wind. The Emmanuel prophecy emerges from this climate of political terror. Ahaz is facing a crisis of trust. He must decide whether to rely on divine decree or human military alliances. Into this tension, God sends the prophet Isaiah with a remarkable offer. Ahaz is told to ask for any miraculous sign he desires, either in the depths or in the heights, to prove that God controls the outcome of the conflict.
Ahaz responds in Isaiah 7:12, "I will not ask, neither will I tempt the Lord." Ahaz is clutching his moral pearls. He uses a veneer of piety to shield himself from the challenge, performing reverence to avoid genuine faith. Ahaz has already settled on a pragmatic political strategy. He prefers a secret alliance with the rising Assyrian Empire, paying tribute for protection rather than trusting a divine sign. By refusing the sign, Ahaz commits a fatal error. He exhausts the prophet's patience and transforms an offer of reassurance into a decree of judgment. Since Ahaz refuses to ask, the Lord issues a unilateral decree in verse 14. "Behold, a virgin shall conceive, and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." This operates through the mechanics of typological prophecy. It moves along two parallel timelines, featuring an immediate local fulfillment that later echoes into a distant messianic fulfillment. Modern readers are highly familiar with the distant horizon. The Gospel of Matthew cites this exact verse in chapter 1, applying it to the birth of Jesus Christ over 700 years later. However, the sign was originally intended for King Ahaz. It required an immediate, literal reality to address the military crisis at his doorstep. To King Ahaz, Emmanuel functioned as a literal ticking clock, measuring out the lifespan of his immediate enemies. Isaiah provides the exact measurement in verse 16. Before the child reaches the age where he knows how to refuse evil and choose good, the land of the two invading kings will be completely forsaken. This timeline tracks the prophetic deadline, 9 months for pregnancy, plus 8 years to reach moral agency. Within this 10-year window, Syria falls in 732 BC, and Ephraim is assimilated by 722 BC. Both nations are left kingless, just as predicted. The exact mathematical timeline matched the total historical collapse of these northern kingdoms within a single devastating decade. Isaiah includes a strange detail about the child's development in verse 15. Emmanuel will eat a diet of butter and honey. There is a common lay assumption that this diet signifies utopian abundance or a thriving state of prosperity. Verses 21 and 22 reveal the textual reality. This diet is the result of severe socioeconomic regression. The surviving population has been reduced to basic pastoral survival. A man nourishes only a single young cow and 2 sheep, yielding thick milk, because organized agriculture has been wiped out. This butter and honey diet is the bitter symptom of total agrarian collapse caused by a devastating foreign invasion. Isaiah 7:23 directly contrasts this primitive wasteland with Judah's former agricultural majesty. The land once boasted 1,000 vines at 1,000 silverlings. This was premium, highly profitable cultivated real estate, requiring intensive labor and high rents. Those costly vineyards are abandoned to the rugged topography, rapidly choked out by wild briars and thorns. Survival tactics must shift entirely. The citizens are forced to carry bows and arrows to hunt for wild game in what used to be their most productive farmland. The cost of Ahaz's lack of faith is the literal unmaking of his kingdom's civilization, reducing it back to a hunter-gatherer wilderness. The text frames this agricultural desolation as a deliberate divine intervention into the region's politics. Isaiah 7:18 states that the Lord will hiss for the fly of Egypt and the bee of Assyria. God summons the massive armies of foreign empires as easily as a man whistles for a swarm of insects. The marching Egyptian soldiers represent the summoned fly. The chaotic Assyrian siege forces represent the destructive swarm of the bee, arriving in such numbers they blanket the desolate valleys and the rocks. The greatest geopolitical superpowers of the ancient world operate strictly as instruments of divine decree, weaponized to judge a faithless kingdom. Isaiah transitions to a highly specific parabolical image in verse 20. The Lord will shave Judah with a hired razor. This hired razor is the king of Assyria, the exact empire beyond the river Euphrates that Ahaz had previously paid for protection. Shaving the head represents the violent removal of the state's highest officials and nobles. Shaving the hair of the feet represents the utter plundering and subjugation of the common citizens. Consuming the beard represents the final humiliation of the king and the high priests, stripping away the supreme cultural dignity of the state. The Assyrian invasion is a methodical, top-to-bottom dismantling of Judah's entire social and political hierarchy. The narrative sequence moves from Ahaz's initial terror to his refusal of God's sign. As Isaiah 7:24 reinforces the grim result, the beautiful promised land completely becomes a hostile hunting ground of briars and thorns. Ahaz refused divine help to rely on a pragmatic alliance, only for Assyria to become the physical instrument of his total ruin. The subsequent Assyrian occupation aligned with the original Emmanuel sign, manifesting the judgment within the child's infancy. God with us serves as a guarantee of immediate judgment for faithless kings, while remaining the primary textual source for the later messianic hope found in the distant future.